Yes. Yes, she is.
Hey, Anthony.
Hello.
All right, why don't we wait another minute and then Will will do his speech and then we'll start. Okay, well, why don't you do your welcoming?
All right, well, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us at one of our virtual committee meetings, you'll notice that you're muted, and you're going to remain muted throughout the duration of the meeting, except for whenever one of the co-chairs calls on you. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing the raise hand button. It's not the wave, it's not the thumbs up, it says raise hand. Only press it once. If you're having, if you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems. It's not to ask questions of the co-chairs or make comments. They will never see those chats. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen to get our attention. We may not see you and we may miss you. So chat me if you're having problems. I'm here to support. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sherry and Anthony to get the meeting started.
Good evening. I'm Sherry Weiner along with my co-chair Anthony Cohn. I'd like to welcome you to the July 19th Voting Reform Task Force meeting. The focus of tonight's meeting is the City Council redistricting plan. Those of you who have joined us before know that we had passed an original resolution and sent it to the commission indicating that we thought City Council District 4 and City Council 5, which are in Community Board 8, were just fine and they really shouldn't be touched. Then on Friday, the commission, the New York City District and Commission issued a draft, a first proposed map, and many of us were surprised to see that they had taken approximately 50 streets off the east side of the Upper East Side, First Avenue, York, and moved them over to District 26 in Queens, as well as moving Roosevelt Island to District 26 in Queens. And that's only proposed. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to take input from you for your comments on this. Let me say this once and I'll say it again. This is a working meeting. This meeting, we are trying to put together a resolution that we can present to the full board tomorrow night, so I can testify on behalf of CB8 at the commission. Without authorization from the board, I can't do that. So I am going to ask you in your comments tonight not to say how terrible it shouldn't be. Save that for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is when you should get on and you should say how upset you are, how wrong this is. But tonight we really are working. We need people to, come up why this is terrible. Of course, they're seniors and they can't get over to Queens. There's no transportation. I mean, all of these reasons, we've already started thinking about it. So we need to put together a strong statement for the resolution. So before we start, let me read to you the criteria that they should have used, which they didn't use, as you will see. All right, so how are these maps drawn? The criteria for council redistricting. The commission is obligated to redraw district boundaries based on legal requirements set by the U.S. Constitution, federal law, state law, and city charter. The council plan must, underline must, abide by one person, one vote, protect minority voting, have only contiguous districts, and not have more than one crossover district per set of boroughs. So you can't have, a district can't be exactly what they've done in District 5. Okay, now, so that's one set of guidelines. The second set of guidelines, the charter, the city charter, lists the following redistricting criteria, but prioritizes them and provides the commission some wiggle room by noting the criteria must be followed to the maximum extent practicable. The district in plan shouldn't follow the following rules. Okay, keep neighborhoods and communities of interest intact. I'm sure many of you will talk about that. That means that the district lines should keep neighborhoods and communities of interest together, whether they're ties of common interest, association, historical, racial, economic, ethnic, religious, or others. So that's the main criteria that they were supposed to follow. Keep districts compact. Prevent partisan gerrymandering. If any of you looked at District 4, that is the strangest looking district I have ever seen. So we have to talk a little bit about that. Avoid oddly shaped districts. Again, District 4 is oddly shaped, to say the least. So those are the things that they were supposed to follow. Oh, goodness, we're up to 43 people. I think this is a big interest to this community. What I'm looking for, we have representatives. Oh, good. There's a representative from Council Member Julie Menon, who represents the 5th District. She could not join us tonight, but she has sent Cameron Kaufman, who is her Director of Constituent Services. So I will be calling on, I know we have a couple of representatives from elected officials. I've been calling on them first, but then we have an expert in land use. I'll be calling on him, and then we'll be opening it up to the public again for comments on specific things and not just how upset you are. So Will, can you unmute Cameron Kaufman, and let's hear what Julie Menon's office has to say about this.
Thank you, Sherry and Anthony, for holding this meeting, and thank you for such a strong turnout tonight. We know just how passionate and interested the community is in the wake of the lines coming out on Friday. While the council member unfortunately can't be here, I spoke with her right before, and we kind of went over a bunch of things that we wanted to make sure that we could convey. The first is we do want to make sure, these are just preliminary lines, and the way that the process is going to go, that the timeline is that following this release, there's going to be hearings in August. They have not set up the date of the Manhattan hearings, but it's going to be starting around August 15th. So we will obviously spread the word, our newsletter, social media, far and wide, when those hearings are going to be, and encourage folks to testify. In addition, obviously, you can testify even starting right now by emailing the commission at I'll send the email to Will and he can put it in the chat. But that is just as effective as coming to the meetings because it ends up right on the Redistricting Commission's website. You can go on the commission's website right now. There's currently no testimony from District 5 residents. We are hoping that changes and we get a bunch of District 5 residents over the next month plus testifying, talking about some of the criteria and communities of interest. So going into that, after those hearings are had, the commission will be releasing a draft of maps on September 22nd, in or around September 22nd. At that point, there will be a council vote on them. If the council votes them yes, they would be officially approved. And I do want to note that in the history of this redistricting process, the council has never accepted the first kind of full draft of commission maps in that sort of September vote. So very likely they will not be voted yes. And then the commission will go back. They will have more public hearings. We will again inform you all, more chances to testify. And then the commission will put out final maps, and that the council actually will not get to vote on. So the commission does have the final say. It does not have to be approved by the council, but the council can vote them down. You know, the big thing that we want to focus on is communities of interest. Obviously, the map our office feels separates communities of interest in our neighborhood in a somewhat unprecedented way. And so that is, you know, a key criterion that the commission looks at when drawing districts. There's a bunch of other things, but communities of interest and preserving them is critical. And, you know, we do suggest that testimony really focus on that element of things, because it's certainly a division of communities of interest in a lot of ways, the map that was drawn. And, you know, we are really encouraging every person to spread the word, to testify, to get friends to testify, to get neighborhood groups to testify. And CB8 as a whole, Council District 5 residents, obviously, but CB8 too, we've got to get a robust bunch of testimony. And our office will be doing everything we can to facilitate that. And we know that CB8 will be doing that as well.
Cameron, can you go through exactly the new lines, since it's very hard to read the maps? You have the new district lines to say which are the streets that are going up, that are proposed to go to Queens, oh, good. Let's see, we can, the interactive one, I guess, Will, is the best one to use.
Yeah, give me 1 second to.
Yeah, and then Cameron, maybe you could walk us through.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Sherry. I'm happy to.
I think because
so yeah,
versions of the map, it's the lines are so thick you cannot tell what street it's on. So I'm sure people would like to know who's affected and who isn't affected.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if we could pull it up and then I could kind of walk.
Will's putting it so everyone on the call can see.
You should be able to see it now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'll start with the territory that was previously part of District 5, that under the preliminary maps would be in District 26. And that would be the whole of Roosevelt Island, in addition to about 54 blocks of Eastern Manhattan. So ranging from about 55th Street all the way to 79th, going east of York Avenue and then what becomes Sutton Place the entire time of that. So anything between Sutton Place or York and the river between 55th and 79th roughly would become part of District 26, as well as then from 55th to 73rd between First and York, or First and Sutton Place, would become part of District 26. And then there's actually a little bit of a carve out, and from 54th to 59th between First and Second Avenue would become part of District 26. So those would be the about 54 blocks that would move there. And then there's a bunch of people who might now live in District 4 who would now live.
They added streets
5.
there.
And so they added from 59th Street to 79th Street, from Lexington Avenue to 2nd Avenue. And then finally, there are some folks in Carnegie Hill who might live in District 4 now, but under the preliminary map would be in District 5. Those who live north of 91st Street between Park and Madison, and then actually even going to 5th between 93rd and 98th Street. So it is, you know, we did some number crunching a little bit. I believe that the district, there's 12,000 folks on Roosevelt Island and 36,000 in Manhattan that would move to District 5, from District 5 to District 26. And
Yeah.
then there's about 39,000 or so from different portions of District 4 that would be joined into District 5.
So just real quick math, I mean, if the people didn't move to District 5 from District 4, that would probably make up, there was really no need to shift everybody to Queens. It's going to be one of my comments. All right, that's good to know. We'll take questions later, and you can ask, but I wanted people to get a sense of, you know, what's being proposed. Council District 26 it's the western part of Queens. It's Long Island City. The bridge that goes from Roosevelt Island doesn't even go into the district. And as Cameron said, the people from the eastern part of Manhattan and Roosevelt Island would only be 27% of the Council 26 districts. So certainly an issue of these people being disenfranchised is certainly another thing we're going to raise. We got a lot of things we're going to, you know, be putting forth. Okay, thanks, Cameron. All right, so the second elected official we have is from Assemblywoman Seawright's office. She also had a conflict tonight, but she sent along to talk to us Kevin Rogers from her staff. So Will, why don't you leave the map up and let's let Kevin address us. Kevin?
Thank you so much, Sherry. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming on this evening. It's great to see so many members of Community Board 8 and public members come on and you know, speak about this important issue, which involves, you know, a lot of people in our community. So Assemblymember Seawright, you know, opposes the proposed district maps, as we all know. You know, we want to keep communities of interest together, and particularly we want to see Roosevelt Island, you know, be included in our district. And of course, you know, Assemblymember Seawright values Councilmember Julie Menon as a partner in government and wouldn't want to, you know, lose her in certain portions of the district. So, you know, as Cameron stated, it's important that you all make your voices heard and, you know, reach out and try and testify at these committees. We'll also be sharing information on that for those who are signed up for our newsletter. And, you know, we really have to make sure that, you know, our message gets across that we want to see particularly our senior community stay intact. And, you know, it's important for everyone to make their voices heard. So that's pretty much it. If anyone has anything, you know, as always, please feel free to email or call us or even drop in to our office on York Avenue. And that's pretty much it. Thank you, Sherry.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. All right, the next person I'd like to call on actually is Chris Collins. He actually was a former chair of CB8 in the early 90s, but I've asked him to speak to us in his former role as land use counsel for the City Council Land Use Commission. And he and I spoke earlier, and he has some really very strong statements that I think will be very happy to include in our resolution. So Will, can you unmute Chris, please?
I think he might have. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, great. So I live in Community Board 6 now at Sutton Place and 55th Street. So I'm outside of the jurisdiction of Board 8, but thank you for the courtesy of allowing me to speak as a former Board 8 chair. And as you probably know by my address, I am in the area that is potentially subject to this change in council districts. Let me just give you a little bit of my background other than being chair of Board 8. I was, as Sherry said, I was counsel to the Land Use Committee. At the City Council, I was a commissioner on the Board of Standards and Appeals. When I retired from the city, I worked as a lobbyist for a couple of years, and I think I have a fairly good sense of the structure and functioning of our city government. So I think the things that I'd like to just touch on briefly, and I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, is how I think Board 8 should be structuring its arguments to the commission. And I have 4 points. First is I think we need to clearly align our arguments to violations of the charter requirements. And Sherry alluded to that earlier. It's about keeping neighborhoods and communities intact and keeping districts compact and to avoid oddly shaped districts. And I think, secondly, we should be able to give concrete examples of how this proposal violates each of those criteria. Third, I think it's important to raise practical difficulties that will be created by this proposal were it to be adopted. For example, will the Q26 council member have a district office in the Manhattan portion of the district? Will that council member cover Manhattan Community Boards 6 and 8? Will that council member have full membership on both borough boards? I think there are practical difficulties that would point to a diminution of representation by the Manhattan portion of this district. And I think it is fair game for you to point that out. And finally, the last point that I think we can make that would give, I think, further credence to the Community Board 8's position, and that is to show how it's not always bad to have a council district that is split over 2 boroughs. In fact, for the last decade, or perhaps longer, current Council District 34, which abuts Queens and Brooklyn, has Ridgewood, Queens, and Bushwick, Brooklyn. There's no physical boundary between those districts, certainly nothing like the East River. Additionally, the demographics of those 2 neighborhoods are very similar. They share an awful lot of similar issues with regard to public transit and public education and things of that sort. Their housing stock is similar. If you drive from Ridgewood into Bushwick, unless someone told you that you went from one neighbor to another neighborhood, you may not even know it. So again, just to quickly recap, I think we need to stick closely to the charter requirements and how they've been violated. We need to give examples of each violation. We need to raise practical difficulties created by this proposal. And I think we ought to talk about, just to show that we're open-minded, that we don't object merely because it's Queens. We object because it doesn't work. So that's my initial comments. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Chris. And Chris has made himself available to assist us. Let me just share to stress a comment. Again, those of you who are on a call are familiar with the name. Dan Kaminsky has been working with us from Citizen Union. And he gave an example to show how influential public comment can be. In Staten Island, there are 3 city council districts, and they really, by population, really are only entitled to 2.5, and one of the districts should be in Brooklyn. But at the initial public hearings, there was such a show of force from people from Staten Island, just people testifying, that the commissioners in the proposed map have left Staten Island with 3 districts. So it goes to show that this is proposed. We know at the meeting on Friday, when this proposed map was voted on, 2 of the commissioners raised the question, why was this being done? Why were why was the east side of the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island being sent to Queens? So people are aware this is a very strange thing that came about. So with that said, Anthony, why don't you take over calling on people? And again,
Okay.
And you could, again, you heard how Chris was specific. That's what, for this tonight, that's what we're looking for. Your ideas, your practical reasons why this wouldn't work. And it's tomorrow night that we want you to get on and, you know, say whatever, but we really need to get this resolution done tonight. So Anthony, I'll turn it over to you, and, you know, let's start.
Thank you, Sherry.
Public. Yeah, start with the public, and then we'll go to community board members.
Okay, and so the first member of the public is actually Elaine Walsh. So, oh, there she is.
Thank you for calling on me. First, I want to thank the task force for putting this out front. I will not speak exactly to what we need in the resolution. I think the people before us were quite articulate. I think, and I have worked on some of this, we know what the issues are. But my concern is when I heard different communities highly represented at the testimony, I would not have known about redistricting if I had not been involved with the community board. So I'm asking that there be a way for publicity to get out there on a key issue that impacts all of us, whether we're zoned out, I'll use that word, or zoned in. I miss it by a block. I'm in 5. But there needs to be a way, and I will admonish the board for not having put this out and posted and used whatever social media they could to let us know. I want to say that my concern in the entire piece here, as we look at it, is we have a proposal for 210 height limits. That is part of District 5. It will move to Queens. Do you think the city council member in Queens cares when we lived through the Blood Center Longfellow and not one city council member cared about our community and zoning? So I am very concerned that by losing an important component of our district, including the hospitals, which is our identity, by the way, what will happen? Do we now not have representation that cares about Upper East Side, Roosevelt Island, and Yorkville? Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Let me see. I'm going to try and get members of the public first if I can. Gail Benjamin, I think, is next.
Gail, look for a prompt to unmute on your screen.
I want to compliment the woman who spoke with the lady who spoke before me regarding the situation with the hospitals, which is a vital part of our community. I have a question. Are any of the schools in our district affected by this? Will they become part of the Queens School Board?
Yes. PS 158 and PS 183 will both become part of Council District 26.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what other schools might be affected, but those two I know for sure.
Well, I think that's something we should consider also, how that's going to affect the kids in this school. How, you know, I just think that's a big issue as well. And we should put that on our list of objections.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Tucker Weiser.
Hi, I know I'm public now because I was an intern for a while, but I'm a public member now. I just want to bring up 2 things that I've noticed that might be useful to mention. The first thing is that Roosevelt Island as a whole was finally actually going to have representation of all Manhattan legislatures until this map came out. It got a state senator. It got a state senator from Manhattan, it had a assemblywoman, it had a congressperson, and it had a state senator, a city council person, but they switched it. So that inconsistency of it being everyone they have representing them being Manhattan, except for one, might be useful to mention. And on top of that, it might also be worth mentioning other places that the redistricting committee could put a crossover district, because they might say something in response like, oh, well, we need to have a crossover district because of population reasons, and this was a good place to put it. I would contend that maybe something in Lower Manhattan connecting to Park Slope would be a good option, because the congressional map, the 10th district, is a combination of Lower Manhattan and Park Slope in Brooklyn, when their special master wrote about why they made that choice, they were very articulate and clear in the data on why that was an appropriate choice. So maybe here we could argue the same thing and say that that would be a good choice for city council district as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've now got Nick Viest. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Viest, but I think Cameron wanted to clarify something.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry, thanks, Anthony. I just wanted to going back to Gail Benjamin's question regarding school districts. Yes, PS 158, which is on York Avenue and 78th Street, and PS 217 in Roosevelt Island would become part of Council District 26, although the DOE school districts would not change as a result of that. That is an entirely separate action that would be taken. So they would remain part of District 2 unless a separate overhaul of DOE school districts were to occur. And I want to, I actually spoke with Will about this earlier today. And, it would be the same thing with Community Board 8. Roosevelt Island would remain a part of Community Board 8. It would not be extricated from the Community Board. That's, again, an entirely different proceeding. This is the council districts,
Okay, great. Thank you. I lost him.
Go ahead,
Nick Viest.
And Nick is a former chair of Community Board 8.
Thanks, Will. That was Will, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I just have a couple of comments. I think these new lines are highly objectionable. I think the onus is on the commission to explain why they changed these lines, which they're currently contiguous. The neighborhood, the streets border on themselves, and this area that they want to include in Queens has all similar issues to the Upper East Side. And if you just go a block west, the issues are the same in that block as they are a block east that includes this area. The issues in Long Island City are completely different. There is development, there's warehouse spaces, there is nothing in common. There are no issues in common to speak of that this area has, that our district has, current one has, with Long Island City. So I think the objection should be simple, that it's simply not contiguous. We share no common issues with these areas, and it would be a detriment to the people who live in this area to include them in a district where they have no common issues. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Will, do we have other?
You have one member of the public, Boaz Galil.
Oh, Boaz. Okay.
So go ahead and unmute Boaz.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I agree 100% with Elaine Walsh. I want to add that, first of all, I still don't understand what exactly does this district change means for someone like me. I see a lot of familiar faces like Michelle, Rita, Barbara, and so on. I assume they are swimming in this subject, but I think that the public, people like me, still don't understand what exactly does it mean. And I feel it's important, right? That's one. The second thing, I want to, if I understand correct, a change need to happen, right? I mean, the population size of the zone increased, so they need to make a change, and it's like a domino one zone is going to impact other zone and so on. So the question is, what is the alternative suggestion? Because if I remember correct, what the community board they talked about, I think that people were saying that probably Roosevelt Island is going to be detached from, you know, from the zone, from our zone, from our current zone, and I think this is what happened. Yeah, so I'm basically, it's a question to Chris. So I guess there is a rejection. He has some suggestion about rejection, but shouldn't the community board aid should provide some kind of a alternative, or maybe basically we are saying keep the zone as is. I don't know if it's possible. That's it.
Where do you live?
I live in Knickerbocker Plaza on 92 and 2nd.
All right, can somebody help me? Does that, where?
That's on. I continue to stay in the Upper East Side. I'm not going to change. This is like the regular area, so it's actually good for me. I mean, I'm not going to get impact. Well, but the question is,
you were asking what this is all about.
Yes.
It's about who will be your city council member. The city council is the lowest level of government, and that's the one who you go to first if you have an issue that needs to be addressed. So that's why we feel it's important that all of the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island stay with a Manhattan city council member.
But a change needs to happen. Something needs, I mean, they have to make a change, right? I mean, they cannot keep the same zone as it was because of the population increase. So something has to be changed.
They could do it. They could do other things to it. All right, let's move on. Anthony, wants to go to.
Let me just make sure if we are. I have one more member of the public. I only have her first name, Lydia.
Lydia, please unmute and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Lydia Canizares. I wanted to just add to the opinions that I agree with. One of the things that we look at when we say in keeping communities of interest together is I don't see common issues going across Manhattan, Roosevelt Island, and Queens. And a big part of community is self-identity. And I think that you'll see that if you talk to anyone in the affected area, they identify themselves as Upper East Side Manhattan dwellers. And having representation that's not part of their community, dealing with the issues that our neighbors deal with day in and day out is not proper representation.
Thank you. I think that very good point. All right, now it looks like we're going to go to members of the community board. And so starting with Michelle.
Thank you very much, Anthony. One issue that I would like very much to be included in our resolution, and I think is extremely important, are the hospitals. And not only is it part of the Upper East Side, we identify the hospital corridor, we vote on decisions that the hospitals, present to us on their development. That all has impact on the streets of the Upper East Side and not the streets of Queens. But in addition to that, I would like it mentioned that the doctors who are affiliated with these hospitals have their offices on the Upper East Side. Their offices are not in Queens. So you are separating their interests by, they're not all full-time. In other words, hospital physicians are not all full-time. They do have full-time attending staff. They have residents who are going to be living in buildings that were on the Upper East Side, but their private offices that they see their private patients in And if they admit them to the hospitals, they then visit them in the hospitals. But those private offices will not be in the same district, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, so if you're talking about communities of interest intact, I would like to see that one mentioned, and without taking the time tonight, try to elaborate on those reasons. I think the schools are a very big issue. If that's going to be split, I don't think it's going to be difficult to show keeping the communities of interest intact, talking about schools, talking about hospitals, and we'll come up with others. But I wanted to be sure that that point will be included in any resolution, because the physicians and the nursing staff, although the non-physician staff, while they may live, many may live in the community, not all of them do, but all of the offices are certainly in the community, because these doctors see office hours on certain premises, during the day, and then before those hours and after those hours, they go to the hospital. So their day is completely integrated, and it will be between two districts, which to my mind is really a foolish scenario. So I wanted to be sure that that got out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, we have Lynn Shinozaki.
Hi, thank you, Anthony. What I'd like to describe is how outrageously complicated this scenario creates for Roosevelt Island, for us to try to remedy any problems or issues here that would come before us. So what is happening is you're going to have Community Board 8 with 3 districts, which is incredibly complicated. Then you have the District 2 school board. We have to deal, all of our layers are now not going to be groups that readily work with one another, which was commented earlier. We finally have our Senate and our Assembly together with Manhattan, and now they're trying to pull us out of the council district, trying to move forward and resolve certain problems that would come here are now going to get super complicated. Roosevelt Island as a community has a high level of people with mobility issues. And we're known for having a high level of people with disabilities and seniors and just people with overall abilities to get around. So now what would happen is, how are we supposed to get those people in front of our council person? Again, that was an issue that was raised. And so are they going to have Roosevelt Island hours? Are they going to come here? We can't guarantee that ahead of time when but these are some of the complicated layered issues that are going to be happening with our community, in terms of, we are predominantly a residential community. That's what we are. That's what we are, a middle-class residential community who I can't imagine will have much of a voice in a district as large as the one that they're proposing.
Yeah. Well, as we've said, it's only 27% of the whole of District 26. So you can't imagine, I mean, the council member isn't going to get their votes out of Manhattan, the district, or Roosevelt Island. So
Sherry, the other thing that I want to throw down is that there really doesn't seem to be a coordination between how our community is represented by our elected officials, the way that this is being laid out. And there's no coordination, and it's going to create, particularly with the school issues, I'm imagining a nightmare.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Paul Crickler.
Thank you, Anthony. Firstly, I want to say thank you to Sharon and Anthony for doing such an amazing job getting all this together. And also, Sharon, the way you presented everything, I just thought it was so clear and so helpful. So thank you. I have a very small suggestion if you're thinking about language for emotion today. I think one of the reasons I'm here is to represent people where I live. I've been on resident, I live for 2 years now. I think one thing that Lynn struck me with a few weeks ago was the idea that when Mayor Lindsay set this whole thing up, he used the phrase, apparently, Manhattan utopian community. And I think that very much represents what people here think about. I haven't got the exact quote, I'm sure Lynn has it. My request is, in all you need all the technical breaches that other people have spoken about eloquently, and I can't add to, but a nice small line there to represent the feeling of people here would be very much appreciated.
Thank you. That was great, actually. Alita is next.
Thank you, and thank you for putting this together. And thank you, Cameron and Chris, for being very articulate about what we should include in testimony. In terms of community of interest, congestion pricing is an example where Queens and Manhattan may not share any interest at all. The congestion of pricing will affect Manhattan. How will Queens have any interest in the kinds of issues with traffic and cars that have been raised, and parking and residential parking permits have any adequate representation in Queens? As Elaine pointed out, the 210-foot height limit is something that people in Queens may not be very interested in, if interested at all. And in terms of the hospitals, I wonder if this is designed to avoid any sort of meaningful community input into expansion or other plans of the hospital, whether or not they're valid or they're good plans, because looking at the blood center, the support of Julie Menon for the community point of view was essential. If the hospitals would like to do something and the community surrounding them, but not in the Queens district, is opposed to it, how will the council member represent that? And the council member for the opposition will have no deference or any other kind of voice, because it will not be the council district that the hospitals are located in. So it feels like effectively there will be no community, there will be no Euler process that is effective for anything in those areas, whether it's CB6 or CB8, whether it's the hospitals or a bank's desire to do something completely different. The council member will just not adequately represent something that is 27% of the district. So I wonder whether a loss of an effective Euler process is part of the planning that went into this terrible, terrible plan. Thanks so much, Anthony.
Thank you, Alita. Next, we have Russell.
Thank you. So Alita just very effectively made one of the points I was going to make about separating the hospitals from the communities that surround them and what that's going to mean for ULURP, so I won't repeat that. But the other related point is, by taking the hospitals out of Council District 5, it now, there's, in terms of determining what services are needed, a lot of that is done at a city council level. And so the city will say, okay, such and such district has, these various different services, and based on what services are in that council district, they may say that a council district is underserved with respect to certain types of services. And so not only does, taking the hospitals out of the Manhattan Council District 5 mean that, the surrounding population is not going to be able to weigh in electorally on things that are going on with respect to those hospitals, but it also means that now Council District 5, because it just lost these major hospitals, could be said to be underserved with respect to healthcare infrastructure, despite the fact that obviously you've got these major healthcare institutions right next door. And so I think the question then becomes also, does that also set the stage for more hospital development in our community district, because they can argue that technically this council district is underserved in that regard, even though, again, as a practical matter, you've got these hospitals right next door. So, to me, the fact that these hospitals were apparently kind of deliberately carved out, and that's the part that was assigned to Queens, looks very deliberate. And I think there's two aspects of that we should mention.
Great. Thank you, Russell. I think that that was actually very sensible. Sharon Pope Marshall is next.
Hi, thank you very much, Anthony and Sherry, for organizing this. Really appreciate it. I am also appreciative of your comments, Sherry, in terms of how we should focus our remarks. And also I'm appreciative of Chris Collins' suggestions for framing our remarks as well. And so I'm going to attempt to do that with a couple of recommendations. First is that following up what Paul Kirkler said earlier, and I think he referenced Lynn as well, is the idea specifically with regards to Roosevelt Island. It says in the charter that district lines should remain intact if there is a historical context to the boundaries, if you will. And so I'm recommending that since historically Roosevelt Island has been part of the Manhattan Councilmatic District from the very beginning, that those historical ties, more specifically historical ties of common interest, remain intact, and that that should be consistent as well with not having those 50 blocks on the Upper East Side severed from the Upper East Side and placed with Queens. So I would advocate for both Roosevelt Island as well as for those 50 blocks, that they do have those historical ties of common interest and should remain within the Manhattan Council District. And I don't know if Chris Collins is still on the line, is still on the call. If he is, he is. I would be interested in asking him a question, and that is if a suggested boundary or a recommended boundary leaves a district less diverse, is that something to be explored?
Will, or chairs, do you want me to respond to that?
More,
please.
More diverse ethnically? What diversity are you talking about?
Across all lines. But if it leaves a district less diverse across all lines, and I did not, and I'm hesitant to be more specific because I'm not even sure whether or not this is germane to our conversation, which is the reason why I wanted to ask Chris the question.
Karen, I think it's an important question to ask. I'm not a civil rights lawyer, but certainly the overriding criteria for this kind of a districting commission is to not disenfranchise voters. So I would refer this back to the co-chairs of the committee to seek further expert advice on a very good question, Sharon.
Well, I do have
Thank you.
the census data for the district. I mean, I can share them with you. I mean, District 5 is, let's see, the largest population is, well, in District 5, it's white, non-Hispanic. In 26, the largest percentage is Hispanic, Latino. I mean, I could give you the specifics on it, Sharon. But can I ask you something? I know you're executive director of Civitas. Is this something that your organization would be getting involved in from a good government perspective?
So when I'm here, as a matter of fact, when I'm on the call representing Civitas, I'll usually have my logo up, but I'm on the call not only as the Civitas logo up, but I'm on the call not only as a member of Community Board 8 and a longtime member of Community Board 8, but also as a resident of Roosevelt Island. So that's the hat that I'm wearing this evening.
Yeah, it was a separate question. We're trying to rally different community groups. We've reached out for these different street associations to get their members. Just because we have you on the line, I was asking if Civitas would get involved in support of this. I don't know if this is part of your agenda, though. I understand wearing.
So the board itself, the Civitas board itself is a very activist type of board, and so that question certainly will be debated and looked at. And I'm happy to touch bases with you, but no one has reached out. You said that there were individuals that were reaching out to community groups and organizations. No one has reached out to Civitas yet.
No, I haven't. Well, consider this a reach out. We'd like Civitas to get involved.
Absolutely.
And support our effort. I mean,
absolutely. I would take advantage of the situation myself, Sherry. So yeah, absolutely.
Great. So as I said, what we are trying to do is get the different, like 72nd Street, 79th Street, 86th Street. Those are already groups.
Yeah, 100%.
We want those people, we want them to come to the meeting tomorrow night, and then tomorrow, we just have to get
yes.
Till August.
And if I may, I think that the song, the refrain of the song is that is around the original resolution that was passed, that we want the district to remain intact. I specifically couched my remarks in focusing not only on the Upper East Side blocks, but also Roosevelt Island, because at the end of the day, we want to be consistent with the resolution that was passed, which is that we didn't want to see any changes. But Chris has notably expressed to us that we have to be clear in how we move forward, and more specifically, how it violates the rules of the charter.
Yeah, well, I'm the scrivener on this, so I'm taking notes, and I'll be putting together. We have a quick turnaround, so I'll be putting together a resolution to be presented. Alerted we'll have it to him tomorrow morning, and it'll be on the agenda for the board meeting tomorrow night, because the hearings are in August and we don't have another board meeting. So that's what the plan is. Okay, Russell, did you want to, I don't know if you wanted to comment on this, or?
I was going to make a resolution, actually, so you don't have to go to me before other folks.
Okay, let's keep going.
I can yield the rest of my time to Will.
Let's keep going with those who've not yet commented. Thank you, Russell. Let's see, we've got Judy Schneider.
Good evening, and thank you, chairs, for the great job you're doing. I also want to thank Chris Collins for coming tonight. He was chair at the time, Barry Schneider, and I attended the first community board meeting, Barry's first board meeting as a board member. So we've known him a long time, and we like all your good work that you've done, Chris. And thank you for helping us with this. First, I'd like to say there's one other school no one mentioned. At 158, we also have a middle school in that building on the side street. So there's an additional school that we haven't talked about. My thought is Roosevelt Island has finally been part of Community Board 8 and gotten together. And I think that's important in any resolution that we mention that. And now to take them away and put them in Queens, I think would just be terrible, my point of view. Now, when Shari was mentioning all the neighborhood associations, she forgot to mention the East 60s Neighborhood Association.
Well, I figured you knew about it.
Yes, well, I'm the vice president, and this would be absolutely terrible for us. It takes a big chunk of the East 60s. It takes members. It takes our merchants. It takes our institutions. It breaks up our community terribly. And as far as we're concerned, we think we're the most impacted by this. This is just the worst resolution I've ever seen. I do have a suggestion, and I know Russell was going to put a motion on the floor, but maybe he can incorporate this in his motion. Can we ask Will to put the map back up on the screen showing the new districts? Because I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, the top line of District 5, yeah, come over east more, Will. What street is that? Do we have any idea?
Yeah, so this is 100th Street.
Oh,
this is 98th Street. So this makes it 97th.
Okay.
And then 96th.
Okay, I have a suggestion to make. They have taken away all the hospitals, which are a long stretch along York Avenue. There are no people living in the hospitals. They do not count when they do a number for the census. So if you were to take that line and make it straight across and take off a piece of the top, all of those blocks have apartment buildings that are densely populated, and maybe even come down one block or so and cut it off across the top. We could keep Roosevelt Island, and we could keep along the East River all the way down into Board 6. We could keep all of that if they were to cut it and make it straight across at the top and give it to the district above us.
So what street is that? The lower street, 90?
I mean, I don't know what the census is for those blocks, but it has to have a lot more people than the area that you're taking out that has all the hospitals and that huge chunk of space and parkland. Well, the park is across the street, I guess, there where there are no people living. So I suggest changing the district around and getting the extra people from the top, giving it to the district above us. I don't know what Board 11's district is.
Yeah, well, we had suggested originally that they take off the top and then they take off for 5. That's what we had suggested.
Yes, well, I think we should go back to putting that into any resolution that we pass tonight, because I mean, losing the hospitals would absolutely be devastating for us, as everyone said, from a zoning point of view, from every point of view. And also remember, there are a lot of hospital people that live on Roosevelt Island and take the tram into the city to work at the hospitals. So it's not just doctors' offices who are not in that district and then work in the hospital, but it's a lot of the hospital workers who are on Roosevelt Island. I mean, that's it for me. There's sanitation, there's transportation. There are all of those things that are different in Manhattan than they are in Queens. So that the city agencies that provide services, the problems, that should also be part of our resolution. The problems that we have in Manhattan are not the problems that they have in Queens. It's a totally different kind of district.
Thank you, Judy. There's a kind of funny statistical oddity here that I've been puzzling over since Friday and can't quite figure out. Manhattan's population is just under 1.7 million in the census, which means we actually don't qualify without some little bits of another borough for 10 council seats. But because it's like 172,000 is the sort of magic number. But I can't figure out why District 5 has to give whatever it was, 30,000
District
people
4, right?
To, well, no, District 5 has to give 30,000 people to District 26. And yes, picks up a few more by taking some away from District 4. But the thing I can't quite tease out is why, in fact, some version of Judy's suggestion, which would be to, and what we talked about before, which would be to make our district, Council District 5 a little shorter from the top and a little shorter from the south, which would also have the virtue of making it more compact rather than less. And I'm not quite sure how that might work, but it seems to me that the solution that we've come up with doesn't make any sense, even just looking at the number of people in Manhattan. And there has to be another way to shift around the 1.7 million people who live in Manhattan to come up with more compact districts, certainly more compact than Council District 4. Anyway, moving on, Rita. There she is.
I agree with everything that has been said there. The only thing you could say is that what they did to District 5 and what they made into District 26 would be like Peoria to Manhattan. There are so many uncommonalities that it begs the question as to what they were thinking. We have education problem, we have health. That entire corridor of hospitals, and yet that is in one corridor, but now we see, as we have learned on Community Board 8, that those hospitals are moving more westward, so that we have part of the hospital and then the main part of the hospital goes someplace else. So, and transportation, we have totally two different recourses of transportation here. And mainly, where does the Esplanade go? Of course, right now, if you draw the lines, the Esplanade at a certain point goes to District 26. So that makes absolutely no sense. And these are just points that may help. And if not, it's the best I have. And Chris, it's a pleasure to meet you.
And one of the comments that came in that somebody said that District 5, we would lose its say over its parks and waterfront. So that's exactly what you're talking about. So we'll have to add that.
Okay, thank you, Rita. And now we have Barbara Rutter.
Rita said a lot of what I was going to say. I won't talk about the Esplanade, but we depend upon the largesse of our council person to help. Ben was certainly very generous, and we certainly expect Julie to be so also. We're not going to get a Queens person interested in it. As far as the hospitals, Rita touched it, we're going to be so divided. So it's the hospital that will come to us to say they're going to develop something that will now be in District 5. How do we argue this? Who do we talk to about it? It's where the location is going to be in District 5, and yet it's the hospital's business, and it's just so divided the way it is. I mean, the hospitals in particular divide. And the other very important member of our elected officials that help us is the borough president. Which is the Queens council person going to talk to our Manhattan borough president to get money? So often they go to each other and they say, I'll give this much and you give that much. That's how it's been all along. And it just is not going to be the same. So the borough president is going to be different from one to the other. The Esplanade is going to be totally ignored because Queens is not interested in our Esplanade. And the hospitals are going to be, we won't know who to argue about when there's expansion, that absolutely they're going to be going west. There's no more room along York Avenue for it.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to skip Chris and Russell because they've spoken already and get back to you at the end. Thank you, Chris. Ed Hartzog is next.
Oh, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Sherry. And yeah, I can't disagree with anything that anybody said. With respect to Roosevelt Island, I can't remember. And did we speak about the schools on Roosevelt Island that we're going to lose also into this district as well? I see Lynn nodding affirmatively. So we did. Okay. So I don't want my comments to be construed the wrong way. Roosevelt Island, from a map maker's standpoint, well, let me back up. This particular set of maps for the city, from what I understand, they have a tighter window in terms of wiggle room as opposed to the feds and the state and what we just went through with respect to disparity between districts. And I believe we moved up because we gained 400,000 people in the last 10 years. We're at 8.6 million. So it's 173,000 is the magic number. I don't want to lose Roosevelt Island, but I can see what I guess I'm getting at is I believe in terms of Staten Island being so successful and not being pushed into Brooklyn, which is what I believe they were arguing about from Staten Island. I mean, let's face it, Staten Island wants to split from the agreement we all made with the 5 boroughs anyway. So with respect to Roosevelt Island, what makes that so tricky, and I don't have to cite chapter and verse for this community board, is you have the tram that connects us to Manhattan, but the bridge that connects Roosevelt Island to land is in Queens. So, and if you get arrested in Roosevelt Island, the 190 comes to, answer the call from the NYPD, because Roosevelt Island has their own public safety group, as people on Roosevelt Island know. It's a state-run operation. But if you get arrested, they then take you downtown here in Manhattan. So it's a lot of back and forth. I guess what I'm trying to get at is when we show up, which is what the point of my comments really are, I'll get to them, is we must be armed with cogent, concise arguments, I see Chris nodding, as to why it must stay, addressing, as those on the call who are lawyers and know and were taught in law school, you must admit what is a problem to the court so that you have credibility with the hearing agency. So you must admit the problem that the map maker had, but that they misunderstood the connection that Roosevelt Island had to us. With respect to just lopping off the district and going up, that creates another problem in and of itself, because if you cut off at 96, then you move all those people up into the district above us, which has a cascading effect going northward. So again, what I'm driving at is really need to dig into the numbers here, I believe. And the other thing I would admonish is we need to show up in force if you're going to have any kind of impact at these hearings. And again, I would go back to the community board in terms of advertising. And I'm going to raise a point that I've raised for many years on this board, and I'm still haven't got a really good answer as to why the local publications in this community do not run a free PSA on behalf of the community board and make it more clear as to why people should be showing up. Okay, but that's a different issue. But I do believe that we need to show up. And I would also just say that be very, very careful what we wish for, because I can think of immediately 2 members of Congress who are not necessarily, thank you, Lynn, who are not necessarily happy about the fact that, okay, yeah, those weren't good lines, so let's redo them. And it's a little bit of that line of, be careful jumping out of the frying pan, because you might not end up on the stove. You might be end up in the element that's heating that pan. So I have no suggestions, but other than simply trying to bring these concerns to the map makers so that they don't make it worse and they correct what we are articulating here are infirmities with what they've proposed. And that will require a lot of bean counting, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks, Lynn. And that's it. I'll stop now.
Thank you, Ed. One of the wonderful anomalies about Manhattan is that Manhattan includes Marble Hill, which is physically within the Bronx. 70,000 people live there, and they are still in Manhattan Council District 10. So it seems to me that those 70,000 people shifted around and distributed among the districts in the Bronx and Manhattan eliminates the Queens 26, I'll call it a problem, but eliminates the consideration, or makes it less necessary to look at expanding Queens 26 into Manhattan. Anyway, just as a kind of another one of those statistical anomalies that is confusing. We're going to have Elizabeth, and then we have another member of the public, Erica, and then we're going to go back to Chris, Russell, and Alita.
I would just like to speak as somebody who is at the northern end of Community Board 8. And I have the experience of being, I think now in Council District 4, being moved into 5, I'm in the same Congresswoman's district and so on, but my street has been for years has been in the East Harlem group. Senator Serrano, and I forget his name, is the assemblyman, and I think that what is extreme people who live near me, and I hope we do keep in the council district 4 or 5, is when there's a state issue, one consults with the Upper East Side, not our own elected officials. So I think it's an example of a poor drawing of lines when your representative doesn't really represent you. He represents cut the northern bit out because I would rather remain in the southern bit. And respect community districts everywhere. I think what our experience is demonstrates that you must respect the individual communities.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so we'll go to member of the public. Erica, please unmute and identify yourself.
Thank you. Shari, can you remind me of who was the guy who presented to us last month? That was
Dan.
Sorry, Ben?
Dan
Was it
Kaminsky,
Ben?
Citizen Union.
Dan Kaminsky.
So he said, if I'm remembering correctly, because like I'm not sure what I had for lunch yesterday. If I remember correctly, he said there was a margin of error in either direction on this.
Yes.
And maybe Ed, you know what that is, but it's 5%.
It's 5% of the 173 ideal number. Yeah.
Right.
So that works out to
8%.
No, 8,500 people.
8,500.
It's not enough to do the jiggle.
But I do remember him. I do remember him, and maybe it's in the minutes that'll be posted or are posted. But it kind of begs the question between
the governor. It had been 10%. The governor passed a law that it was 5%, and then that was taken into consideration coming with the districts. I mean, every district isn't exactly 173,000. I mean, there's the 5%.
Who is appointing these? So for this, I mean, we know what happened with the assembly, but who appointed this committee?
There are 15 people on the committee. Majority were appointed by the mayor. I can find my notes by the mayor, and then some by the city council, Democratic city council, and the remainder from the Republican city council.
And is there anywhere, because I looked at a document that Will dropped into the chat, is there anywhere that provides their credentials?
Their website.
Yeah, there's a web. It's it's not it's New York City District and Commission, and they give all their credentials, but it doesn't matter. The public doesn't have any say with who they are.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to Chris, then Russell and
It's in the chat with the breakdown of who appoints. So, because remember, we originally complained that there were only a few women. So we complained about that originally, and we asked that the staff at least have more equality. And I don't really know how that's not posted anywhere. So I don't know if they have more women on staff.
Okay, Chris.
Very quickly, when the board is drafting its resolution and wants to enumerate the practical difficulties that are potentially created by this proposal, I think you need to look at the city budget specifically. Every year when the budget's adopted, city council members have discretionary funds at their disposal for senior programs, youth programs, and cultural affairs programs, as well as capital dollars. City council members also conduct participatory budgeting within their districts. This Manhattan portion of this proposed district is 27%, roughly. I don't know how that portion of the overall Queens 26 would ever prevail in participatory budgeting. So I think it's a real everyday question that needs to be answered. That's it for now.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
That's a good one. Yeah, I got that one. Okay. Good one.
Russell, I know you want to propose a resolution, and I think Alita, did you have something to say before we do that? Nod.
Yes. There's someone else from the public, a Monica, who has her hand raised. And I
okay.
just wanted to expand a little bit on the congestion pricing issue and the fact that the 59th Street Bridge will no longer be part of a Manhattan council member district. So if we're talking about tolling or not tolling the bridge and the traffic that comes off of it with respect to congestion pricing, I'm not really sure how we'll have a voice. We've asked for a Manhattan representative. Will that still continue to include the far eastern side of the district? And that's all. So I didn't mean to say what I was going to say, but I did anyway. So thank you.
Good point. Okay, Monica, then Russell, I think, is going to propose a resolution.
Yes,
Monica.
yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My question is not about the resolution. It's about trying to understand the new lines for District 4. Looking at them yesterday, I see that there are parts of Hell's Kitchen now in District 4.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that was true ever before, and what happens in that case. I mean, I know that my friends in Hell's Kitchen really love Eric Botcher, who is their city council member. And we, of course, we love Keith Powers in District 4. But what will happen now if we become one district? Who would be our council member?
So if you look at this map that's up right now, the black line right here is where the end of District 4 was previously. This follows Broadway essentially. And so if you see this red here, this is what will soon become, well, this is what, sorry, is proposed to become part of District 4. And if you look at it and you see like the population, as I scroll across the side, you can see the population for each of those districts. It roughly adds up to a very similar number that's over here. So it's essentially shifting the council district westward over here, and it will extend really far out actually, because if this is 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, all the way out into Hell's Kitchen now.
And this is the first time that Hell's Kitchen has been part of the Upper East Side.
So,
right?
well, at least in recent memory, but I think it's very correct that in the most recent redistricting, a bunch of this Midtown Manhattan was picked up into District 4, and it used to just sort of hug Central Park South. And then this is the much further extension over. And some of this is actually because Hudson Yards, and there's a new growth of population in Council District 3, so it was always going to have to shrink to find its ideal district. So their method was to pull District 4 all the way over to the west side, and put Hell's Kitchen in with the folks of the east side.
Okay, so we keep Keith Powers, and Eric stays in Hell's Kitchen. Is that that's my
no?
question.
I mean, I would say like here's Hell's Kitchen, right? You see where I'm drawing the map. I mean, Hell's Kitchen would then be split between Council District 6, which is currently represented by Gail Brewer. Parts of it would be represented by Keith Powers, and parts of it obviously would still be represented by Eric Botcher. So it just depends where in this section you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Wow.
Okay. All right. Well, we now have, two more commenters, and maybe we should do that and then go to Russell. So I think we have Faith Fraser.
Hi, this is Faith Fraser. I wondered, has anybody talked about the growing older demographic of the Upper East Side and how that's also sort of a community of interest? I remember about 10 years ago when the largest group of growth was in 90 plus.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that and how their lack of accessibility to get to the Queens District office and their particular needs of seniors. We are going to include that because that section that's being cut off has a very high percentage of seniors living there. So it will be addressing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Jennifer Greenblatt.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, and I'm happy that you're doing this. I just heard about it earlier from Valerie Mason. I actually am here representing myself, who is a resident of the Upper East Side, but do work for Community School District 2. And this would involve and be very detrimental to 3 of our schools, 3 elementary schools, 217 on Roosevelt Island. I know people mentioned this before, 158 in Manhattan and 183. They're all sister schools. We also have above 158, Yorkville East Middle School. And let's not forget the school that this neighborhood, and I was the parent leader on it, worked for very hard, Eleanor Roosevelt High School on 76th Street. So there are a number of schools that will be impacted by this. And it's just outrageous to me that things keep happening in the city that are pushing people out. I know that the schools, our schools in District 2, are losing students every single day because parents have had enough and they're moving to the suburbs. So thank you, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, one more comment from a board member, Judy Schneider, and then we will go to Russell, I promise.
I have a question for Will, and I don't know if he or Anthony, if you can answer it. If we were to cut the line at 96th Street, which is our community board line, if we were to follow that, how many people above 96th Street would we get? Would that be the number that we're looking for and could keep the Lower East Side and Roosevelt Island?
I have no idea.
Will, would you?
I doubt it, actually.
So sorry. If you cut off, give me 1 second to pull up sorry, you didn't hear that word. Essentially, you can basically, if you take parts of the Hell's Kitchen area and put that into District 4, and you reroute much of the 2nd Avenue to, actually, I'll show you what I'm looking at because I did the math earlier on a different map. If you cut off at 96th Street, which is basically here, and you take away this expansion into Hell's Kitchen, and you left most of the districts the same and just did that and took a little bit of this over here and gave it to District 2, you would be within the margin of error, and you could keep all of this basically the same with minor edits. So yes, it would be roughly 77,000 in each of those when I did this sort of math, and I will zoom in if it's a little easier for you guys to see if you're not as familiar with the map. If we just cut it off at 96th Street, left Roosevelt Island, and left all of this in District 5, and just made some moderate changes there, and gave this to District 8, which District 8 actually shares across into the Bronx, so it actually does have a lot of flex space. You can consolidate less of District 8 in Manhattan, and you can actually get to where like this Council District 6, takes Hell's Kitchen, and then District 2 takes some of these lower sections that we talked about. This is basically, I was just proving that the resolution we had would work, and it does, essentially with like tiny little changes, here up at the top, between the 2 districts, and like losing up here.
We'll go over that again. The Hell's Kitchen part with goes to District, you're talking about District 4 now?
Yes, so the problem that if you look at, go back to the map of what's proposed, right? It loses what is a large, group of people here from District 4 into District 5. So it can pick up over here, and District 4 can pick up over here in the west side. And so if you don't take that and you give that to a West Side council member, you can keep this in District 4 and keep all of this and Roosevelt Island in District 5.
Right.
So that was my point, Anthony. Could we work that specifically into the resolution? We don't need to have the numbers now, but Will said he would.
No, I want to do that. Will, could you write that up for me and send it to me so I can put it into the I think I'd like us to be able to propose a specific solution. So if you have one, if you wouldn't mind sending it to me so I can incorporate it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I spent way too much time the other day making a map that worked.
So let's see, take advantage of it. Yeah, so if you could give me specific.
Oh, that's the same map, sorry.
Yeah, if you could write out what you just said so I can stick it in the resolution, I would love to give something specific.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about, yes. And it does, the problem you get into is Staten Island just shouldn't be 3 seats. And so it lowers the threshold for all of the rest of the percent variable. And so then you get into a lot more fun exercises of redoing Brooklyn and Queens. But
all right, so let's put that in the resolution. So
Cameron, I think you had something you needed to offer for that.
No, I just wanted to say I think that it is helpful to play around with the tool that Will has been playing with, because you take population from one place, you have to adjust every other district, and a lot of the Manhattan difficulties, right? It stemmed District 3 is one of the most growing population districts according to this recent census. And so that's why District 4 went west to take some of that from District 3, and then District 5 compensated and went west. And so there was a domino effect. And just, Will seems like he's drawn up a very nice new map of the districts that can address a lot of the issues. And so, it's a very easy software to play around with. It's not particularly complicated. So I would advise anybody who has free time to check around and to play with it, to kind of see and make the numbers work and to experiment with it, because I think the commission will respond best to actual, recommended lines, not just.
No, that's why I think it's important. And if Will has come up with something, let's go with that. And again, we're under a tight time frame, so let's put together what we can, and then we have a month to refine it and before we actually testify. So we'll make sure the wording of the resolution gives us the leeway.
And we'll have another chance. As I said, the council has never approved the first round of maps, so there will very likely be some sort of October or November testifying that happens again, because the maps don't need to be set until February. That is the absolute time when they need to be set. So there will be time down the road as well.
Okay. Russell, I promise.
You do have one new person who hasn't spoken, Rebecca Dangor, if you want to go to her, but I understand.
Russell is smiling. Okay. All right, Rebecca.
Hi, apologies. I did watch most of the meeting on YouTube and then decided I needed to hop on because I got home a little bit late from work. My first question is, Will, in kind of your proposed solution, how does it address the areas that used to be in District 4, kind of from Lex to Second, and the splitting of some institutions? Does your plan address?
Oh boy, let's not call it my plan, but
what we're voting on, what we're thinking of voting on today.
Because so I will flag something that no one else has mentioned, and I think it is worth pointing out that in the in the proposed plans, when they shift the district lines for 4 and 5 over to Lexington Avenue, you would literally split Hunter College like you would walk across the Sky Bridge and you would be in a council district, a different council district. So Hunter College, which is one of our major institutions, would be split directly cleaved in half between two council districts. I think that having sky bridges to different council districts is probably strange and maybe worth noting.
Yeah, thank you.
Good point.
I do work for Hunter, so I didn't want to bring that up myself, but it's very strange. I do think, obviously, we were very upset about Roosevelt Island and the rest of the areas that would suddenly be in Queens, but I do think how they handled District 4 in and of itself was pretty strange as well. And I would like any plan that we vote on to kind of try and use the two issues together to kind of fix the overall Upper East Side situation.
Did I lose Anthony? Oh.
No, I'm here.
Okay. I think Rebecca's done.
And okay, great. So now we can go to Russell.
All right, thank you. So I will make a motion, and if it's seconded, I'll speak to it. But the motion is that CB8 strongly disapproves of the inclusion of the section of the Upper East Side that's in Council, Queens District 26 and Roosevelt Island being included in District 26, and encourages the inclusion of those in a Manhattan council district, and it's for all of the reasons that we've listed. And I gather Sherry's been keeping track of everything. I mean, I think we can keep those, we can note those all in the whereas clauses. So that's the resolution. If somebody seconds to it, I just have another point to make also.
I second it.
Okay, so one other argument that I think we want to make is also the East River Esplanade and the impact that that this is going to have on that, and essentially taking the East River Esplanade out of a Manhattan-based district, which is an important Manhattan amenity and feature, and one that has actually needed a lot of attention from the city council over the years, and certainly does now. So that's another point that I think we'll want to include.
Great. Thank you, Russell. So people speaking to this, there's a resolution on the floor. Michelle. Oh, I'm sorry, Elizabeth first.
I just have a question. When Will was describing boundaries, I had to go rescue my dog, who is, I'm afraid, commenting at the moment. What is the northern boundary? 96th Street? Is that your proposal?
Yes, he's proposing,
Yeah.
well, or Judy
again,
or somebody, yeah.
That's what Will suggested, and my resolution, I think we would incorporate that. I think the resolution, as I stated it, I think we want to incorporate Will's kind of proposed shifts.
Yeah, when he gives me that language, I'll put it in.
So the line would be through 96th Street, and the southern side would be in the, I guess it's in District 4.
Yeah, you could do that. Where this is what I played with, and I did was at 96th Street. There's a weird couple of carved out districts that cross over 96th Street right here. This is Lexington Avenue, so east of Lexington. So I don't know if that's something that they can fix. I'm sure it is. That's just not my expertise.
This is 96th Street.
Yes. So this red cutoff and the yellow cutoff is 96th Street. So north of it is.
So you're taking the Community District 8 boundaries?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Michelle.
Thank you. I just wanted to suggest to Russell, if he would accept that you use the word remain when you were talking about the Esplanade. You were talking about it in terms of it not going to District 26. I wonder if you would consider positive language to say that it should remain in this district, in the district it is now. And my other, if you're okay with that, my other suggestion is that I believe we should attach the map to this resolution and outline it very carefully with arrows that point to the places, we're talking about: hospital here, Esplanade here, because I think that when it goes to the commission, it will be a much easier read for them if they're looking at a correct graphic right in front of them. And I would further suggest that when we testify, I know some of their testifying was in person as well as on Zoom. They were hybrid meetings. So whether it's in person or on Zoom, I would suggest that we had the visual to show them. Because frankly, the way Will presented it, it made it very easy to understand and it made sense. It was quite logical. We had suggested something similar in our initial resolution, but for some reason it sounded much more complicated or convoluted than this. I don't know why that was, but this sounds good. But I would love to use the word remain and then attach visuals. So I hope that's okay with you, Russell.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea, I would say both. I mean, I think we oppose the inclusion of these areas in Council District 26, and we want them to remain in a Manhattan-based council district. I mean, I think those are essentially the two operative.
Yeah, I think it's important to include both that.
Those are the resolve clauses. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Michelle. We have Ed now.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, I'd like to echo that's sort of my point that Michelle raised. And I can't remember the exact wording, Russell, but I would like to say that we do not frame the resolution in a way that pits Manhattan against Queens. I don't think that's a good look when we're in front of the commission. That's going to engender a lot of, knee-jerk hostility. And I think also, again, don't take it the wrong way, and just in terms of preparation, the counter argument someone might make is, because I agree with the underlying premise that I think someone, whoever's representing 26, might not have the urgency, shall we say, to expend their resources, their discretionary resources on the Esplanade, on the Manhattan side of East River. But I think someone might, if they want to keep the lines the way they are for whatever reason, their counter argument might sound good to other folks is, well, look at what you have. You now have, instead of 2 council members, you have 3 council members giving resources to the Esplanade instead of 2. So you have 3 now, and you have 2 congressional candidates or 2 representatives, because as we all know, our current representative, Congresswoman Maloney, has secured funding for us as well from the feds on the Esplanade. So again, just more as a preparation, just stylistically, again, just removing the language that might pit Manhattan against Queens or make it sound like we're being very exclusive or whatever adjective you care to use. And just be prepared for that argument in terms of the resource argument. I think it's easily defeated, but I just want to throw it out there. That's all.
Great. Thank you, Ed. We now have Lynn.
I want to concur with some of the comments that Ed made. One of the other things that I wanted to emphasize that was briefly mentioned earlier, but I think is really important, And that is in terms of how these communities identify. And I did discuss that previously about Roosevelt Islanders identifying themselves with being Manhattanites. And I think that that's an important part of also the people from the Upper East Side, many of whom have lived there very long periods of time, which commented earlier by a few people in terms of some of the senior population you have in that group. And the other thing that I want to implore everyone who's here, that they commit to testifying in August to these issues. Don't just come in here and talk. Find out where a final resolution is and sign up, register, and voice these concerns. And then the last thing that I wanted to say was that we are we're in a period of time where people are being disenfranchised to do what they're doing. And somebody did briefly mention this. This is definitely seeming like a premeditated way to really disenfranchise the Upper East Side and the city. And I'm really concerned about the ramifications in terms of what would happen long-term with this really incredulously poor, in my opinion, thought out redistricting. Thank you.
Lynn, continuing on what you're saying about, excuse me, Anthony, I just want to say one point about identification. How about people who have bought their co-ops and condos in thinking they were in a Manhattan council district? They are expecting services from their Manhattan City Council member. And now, like when I had a problem on my street and I called up Keith's office and he took care of it. If I had to call the Queens Council person, I don't think so.
Sherry, I want to add into that because I've had my own experiences when an issue would come up on Roosevelt Island with calling somebody in Queens and like either the council person or the Queens Borough president. I can tell you from my years of reaching out that only recently were we even responded to. So I am horrified at what this means for both the Upper East Side and our community, because I could not get them to answer even my call.
Yeah,
that's my experience. That's part of why you see me being so terrified.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. All right, Anthony, I'm sorry. I just wanted
Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate being able to say that too.
Stick that in about even you buy a property in the Upper East Side, you assume you're in, you're going to be dealt with, represented by a Manhattan council member.
Okay, Elaine.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to when I had raised some issues on zoning, that I think it's important that the resolution include that CB8 has a strong devotion to historic districts and landmarking, and that we will not have the support of a Queens Council member going before the LPC. And I know, Ed, you don't want me to go pit against one Queens versus Manhattan, but this is key. We are a very strong district on these issues. And I think we will lose some of that if it goes over to a Queens Council member. My experience with the Longfellow Blood Center is representative of the fact that not one city council member, other than our own, supported us on the zoning and basically said, we wish we had it where they were. So, my experience says we really have to be on the defensive at this point with our needs in our community for elderly, our schools, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, I would
Thank you,
suggest
Elaine.
folding that, like to Ed's point, making that in a sort of positive way and essentially folding that into the sort of community of interests and alignment argument. And basically, like, that's another thing that our community and that the Upper East Side has in common, is the fact that we do have these historic areas and this historic zoning and commonality in terms of the zoning that exists here among these areas of Manhattan that they've split apart and that we don't have with Queens. So not making it a thing of like, we don't trust Queens to do it, but more like a positive thing of saying, this is one of the things that these areas have in common that we want to preserve and maintain, and why it makes sense under the charter to actually keep them together for that reason.
No problem.
Thank you, Russell. Judy.
Yeah, just a quickie. When you, Sherry, when you mentioned the Esplanade, can you say Esplanade and Andrew Haswell Green Park? Because that's from 59th Street to 62nd Street, and it's not finished yet. And there's a whole section that we're gonna have to do major fundraising for. And I can't see the person in Queens giving us major money to fix the park here in
Give
New
me
York.
that again. Give me that again.
I'll send you an email.
Okay. You know what, again, we have so many wonderful ideas. I'm concerned that I'm not going to be able to capture all of them. I think what we should do, Russell, you tell me what you think. I'll put in as many as I can. I would like to have the board approve the resolution in concept and then give us time to flush this out a little bit. I'm just physically never going to be able to, and I'd like to, interact with people. It's just not going to happen overnight. So Russell, can we do that? That we do just a broad-based, that we get the consent of the board, that we can testify on this, and then give us time to, to really flush it out a little bit. So it's not really.
I think we can. I think what we need to do is list.
What if it's your language and then work on, the whereases even. I just don't feel confident that I can really, in how many hours I have, can I really give this the weight it should have and put it together. So how can we do this, since we have till August, till they're going to be, really voting on this?
Yeah, I think Rebecca may have some ideas also, but I think if the minutes just list very sort of briefly, like even in bullets, what the arguments are and what the points are, and just sort of what the objections have been, I think we don't necessarily have to sort of fully write out how we want to phrase it in terms of the whereas clauses. Like, we'll have time to sort of craft that more fully. I think as long as the minutes somewhere in there reflect what the points are, and I think it could be very brief, and the resolution could be, that community board will send a resolution reflecting all of these arguments to the redistricting commission. I mean, I think we can do that. I just think we have to have it in there, somewhere, but again, can be in very sort of summary form and not in kind of final form that we're going to want to send to the board. That's kind of the persuasive argument that we want to make.
I got Anthony to volunteer to do the minutes. I don't think he thought that was going to be.
It's okay. It's okay.
I've been taking the minutes. Anthony, maybe you and I can work together on if we're going to, if the body.
Just a list. I mean, just a list of what the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that'll do it.
I've noted most of them. Okay, we've got Rebecca.
I just mentioned you can also have friendly amendments tomorrow if you forget something. There's always the opportunity for that.
Yeah, I really wanted to be the spirit of the resolution is really what we're going to be approving tomorrow night. All right.
So Sherry basically beat me to the point as to why I was raising my hand. This is such an overwhelming thing to have to put together in less than 24 hours. That being said, I do think there is another option, which is we can kind of vote on the idea and maybe open it up to board members to make sure their concerns were addressed, or write to the co-chairs or something. And I know we hate having special meetings of the board, but for something like this, if we were to have a meeting in August that we just needed to get a quorum to attend, to vote on official language before the thing, that's also an option. But I think there is a way to
Oh, I
make-
don't think, Rebecca.
I want to do that.
I think we've got enough.
I know, but
I don't think we need that. I think it's just a question of, putting it together into a cohesive format. I don't think we need a special meeting. I think if we approve the spirit of the resolution, the board tomorrow night, and then a couple of people, who I can do a draft, and then a couple of people can give me more language, I think we can put a group together to finalize it.
I agree. It's just that's the only other possible way to do it. And I think we can't vote on a fully, like a resolution that will be signed by Russell and you and Anthony and submitted to people tomorrow. I just don't think you have genuinely enough time. So as long as we can vote on the spirit.
Well, we can use Russell's language. That's what the resolution is. And then we will say a more fully spelled out resolution will be prepared.
Yeah, and we can even say, I mean, look, for the reasons stated in the meeting. I mean, I think that gives us a lot of latitude.
I agree. I think my second, briefly, my second point was I agreed with what a lot of the last speakers said. I don't know if there's a way to word this properly to not kind of take away what Eb was trying to say, but I think there's something to be said about ensuring the majority of the people affected by the decisions of a particular spot in the city actually vote for that representative. I think that's the real alarming thing with what they took out of Manhattan and Queens. It's who is going to be affected more, the people who live directly next to that area, and those people will not be able to vote for their representative. And to me, that is the craziest part of what they proposed. I don't know if there's a politically savvy way to phrase that, but I think that gets to the core of why this is so upsetting.
You think you want to include about District 4, the amount of gerrymandering that is in that district? I mean, it violates every rule.
I don't want to, I think you're getting into tricky territory. I mean, what we've proposed in terms of the map shifts, I mean, we are talking about changes to District 4 that we would like to see. I mean, I think we're going to get farther if we sort of put forward an alternative that's actually acceptable and workable and makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I agree.
And I worry about, I mean, look, obviously our resolution is certainly critical of what the commission has done. There's sort of no way around that, but I don't want to go further in that direction than we need to.
Yeah, no problem. I was just raising it since it is, does look, exactly what they weren't supposed to be doing with the districts. Okay, go ahead.
Rita.
One of the things that Shari started this meeting out with was the configuration of the proposed districts and how crazy community board District 4 was. What Will did, and I think he did a masterful job on this, is that he really smoothed out the lines for 5 and 4 and made them equitable and also following the guidelines of the council. And just last, one picture's worth 1,000 words. I know that we want to attach our suggestion. I wonder if we can attach it in color, because people see color faster than they see blank spaces. So thank you. I think you all did a masterful job. Proud of you guys.
Thank you, Rita. Alita.
I'll be quick. Does anyone know what CB6 is doing about this? While they're not affected to the same extent they are affected. So I would suggest that that the resolution go directly also to CB6. Does anyone know what Cornell Tech is thinking about this? Maybe it's a feather in the cap for Queens, so it doesn't care much. Density is one I know, along with the list of Chris. I don't know if anyone brought it up, but the density of the areas leads to all of the different issues, even bikes and scooters and bus lanes and those kinds of issues. And then last, how practically, how will Queens think about all of this when we're only it's a quarter of their district and they'd have to give funding and council member time? I don't think that we could put that in there, but it may be something, I'm not sure that we could, but it may be something to think about. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Bad point. Barbara.
Want to wrap this up? We do have some.
That's it. I'm about to call the question, except I always press it.
Yeah, we do have some new business that we have to do also quickly. All right, so why don't
we got some seconds?
Everybody have
number of seconds, Michelle.
Does everybody have a sense of what we're voting on? We're voting on basically in what Russell proposed, that we we disapprove of the proposed redistricting map that moves approximately 54 streets from the east side of the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island to Queens District 26, and they should remain as Manhattan-based council districts is basically the resolution. And then I will put some of the language in. We'll say that what are we going to say? That this asks the board to approve the spirit of the resolution with the reasons stated in the minutes. And Anthony and I'll figure out some English to, so everybody understands what you're voting on. All right, so I don't know, what are we doing? Will does this?
Yeah, so, all right, if you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, I'm gonna ask that you raise your hand right now. And then as soon as we take those votes, I'm gonna read the entire list of board members who are in attendance so that we make sure we have everybody's name in the record. So I'm not seeing any hands, but I'm going to give it 3 more seconds. So if you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous, but I'm going to read the names. So it's Anthony and Sherry Weiner, Russell Squire, Addison Leave, Alita Camp, Barbara Rudder, Ed Hartzog, Elizabeth Ashby, Gail Barron, Jane Parshall, John McClement, Judy Schneider, Lynn Shinozaki, Michelle Birnbaum, Paul Crickler, Peggy Price, Rebecca Dangor, Rita Popper, Sondrea Coleman, Sharon Pope Marshall, and am I missing anyone else?
No. I don't think so.
You have 17. I had counted 17.
All right.
Okay, so that's passed. I guess, Will, if you still could get that, Anthony and I, that language, I think we want to definitely put that in the minutes. And we'll put together something for the board to vote on. Is there any old business? If not, we do have one new business matter dealing with the 23rd elections, and I'm going to call on Ed to report on what they've done now. Can you?
Thanks, Sherry. For those of you playing the home version of the absentee ballot game, you may or may not know, for those of you who aren't, that the D-Trip the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in Washington filed a lawsuit in the Southern District of New York. District Judge Ronnie Abrams issued a decision last week on the 13th addressing 4 issues regarding absentee ballots. I think it's relevant for us as this decision will affect the August 23 primary and the general election. I have the memo here, so please forgive me for reading from the memo, not looking at you, but I tried to winnow it down. I'll see if I can post this on the board so you can see it or somewhere on our website. But briefly, there were 4 issues that were raised by the D-Trip with respect to absentee ballots here in New York State. The long and short of it is that Judge Abrams agreed that the one issue regarding postmarks of absentee ballots that are received 2 to 7 days after Election Day, if they are missing a postmark, those ballots will still be counted. So briefly, going back to the beginning now, on the 4th of February, they filed the lawsuit against the state board challenging 4 practices under New York election law. The 4 practices were: 1, the rejection of the wrong church ballots; 2, the rejection of wrong county absentee ballots; 3, the rejection of absentee ballots without postmarks that are received between 2 and 7 days after the day of a primary or general election; and the 4th is the rejection of absentee ballots with various technical defects. It was alleged that these practices disenfranchised voters in violation of the First and 14th Amendment, right to vote, and the right to substantive due process and equal protection, and various provisions of the Civil Rights Act. With respect to the first issue of the wrong church, these are ballots that are cast by a voter who is in the wrong polling place, but in the correct county. So for us, just a quick example for me comes to mind. It's if you're here on the Upper East Side, you're in New York County, you go to Wagner and you should be going to Marymount. You go to Wagner, you should be at Marymount, you're in the wrong church. Those of you who are mavens of election law, you will remember over the years the right church, wrong pew issue, which is when you show up at your correct polling place, but you then go to the wrong election district. Those of you know, you go to Wagner, there are multiple tables with all those numbers above those folding tables. Those are your election districts. Anyway, the point is, the DCCC challenged the practice of not counting affidavit ballots of those who appear in the wrong polling place, but in the correct county. Even though many of the offices on the correct and incorrect ballots might be the same. Judge Abrams noted that the D-Trip did not show a burden that New York's law poses on voters outweighs the state's interest in regulating where ballots may be cast. The judge stated that because New York State informs voters of their correct polling place through the mail, going to the wrong polling place is the voter's error and not the state's. This is a recurring theme in her decision. A note here, regardless, both houses of the legislature have passed a bill recently to address this problem in the 2022 session. The bill numbers are S-284C. Looks like Chair Myrie sponsored that, though in this bill, the voter must be in the correct assembly district for their vote to count.
Ed, everybody's getting glazed over.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Anyway, the bill hasn't been signed. The next one is, sorry, the next one is they challenged the practice. Yeah. So
really that makes it. I think that's the only thing that really affects us. That if you have if the postmark is missing, that one seemed to be the main.
Well, the main one was, yeah. So if you're missing it, so under state law, if you don't have a postmark on your absentee ballot when you send it in, it must arrive either on election day or the day after. If it does not, then it does not count. Under the current state of election law, if your absentee ballot arrives anywhere from 2 to 7 days after the date of the election and it has a postmark, it is presumed that you dropped it off in time to vote. The point here is that Judge Abrams agreed that it's the post office that has made the error with respect to putting a postmark on the envelope. So, in her opinion, she felt that this constituted a severe burden on the right to vote, and she had issued preliminary injunctive relief for voters on that. Again, I know everybody's eyes are glazing over, so I won't go in ad nauseum here. I'll post it, but I think the upshot of the entire thing is that we need to, again, be getting out there, telling people how to vote and how to fill out their absentee ballot. For those of you who do know, I know a lot of people are saying that, well, we're going to make up for a lot of absentees here in the August primary. That's yet to be seen. Just for you who know, pre-COVID, the average absentee ballot total is somewhere around 4 to 7%. Now, at the height of the COVID pandemic 2 years ago, that number shot up to 40%, as many of you know. I do not know what that has fallen down to now, but I'm sure it is not at 40%. So with respect to the upcoming primary, again, I go back to what I said before, notice. I have asked our state senator, Liz Kruger, or someone from her office to maybe appear if we're having a meeting in August of the Voting Reform Task Force to talk about this, but there you go. I'll try to see if we can post it.
But at this time, both congressional candidates are doing a big absentee vote, get out the absentee vote. I mean, Ken O'Carrollin has sent letters. I assume Jerry has too. So.
I understand that there is something about the fact that you cannot change your mind on that one now. There has been some change. You can't.
Now, once you apply for an absentee ballot, you cannot vote in person.
Right. Before you used to be able to switch your mind. So that one has changed as well. Again, I would say all these rules are very esoteric. They're very arcane. It's very draconian in New York. Turnout in the primary in June was hovering just above 10%, and not to be cynical, but I hope spring's eternal, but I'm very concerned it'll be below that for August.
Oh, I think so too. Okay. I don't know. Faith, is it something important? Because we'd like to close out. Faith?
Hello. This is Faith Fraser on the same topic. Russell, are you still on the call? I had to call in. I can't see you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, he is.
Okay, I'm just making a point about a particular poll site, which I actually saw, Russell. I was coordinating the election day site at Julia Richmond High School with less than half the poll workers, no air conditioning, and a lot of equipment problems. In fact, Russell can attest that he couldn't come in at 6 because we weren't up yet. So I just wonder if there's anything, since this is the Voting Reform Task Force, to make sure that the poll sites are healthy environments. I mean, the gym can't support air conditioning, but it seems like they could put a generator and some fans or everything. We requested all that and it never came. So I know the school custodian called me and said that it was going to be even hotter in August. So
yeah,
this is something to the community board.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Faith. This is not something that the community board it's not one of our issues that we can help you.
I mean, we could always ask for it. This is my polling place just to
reform.
give the
Well,
yeah, he was there. He saw that.
Board of you can certainly contact the Board of Elections.
Oh, we've done that. We just need as many people to contact the Board of Elections. In fact, Russell, you were there. If you can, it would be great, even just as a private citizen, to push for it.
Right.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We maybe it's something we can write a letter, just
would be
encouraging
great.
them to solve it and make sure that they have everything in line.
Thank you. And I heard all of what Ed said, and I'm aware of a lot of that, but I want to ask you a question, Ed. Do those rulings, the church and all that stuff, does that affect the June count? Do you know? Because I know they're still counting.
Yeah,
They have 30 days to certify.
No, this will only affect the August primary and the general election in November.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Elaine, Michelle is last, and then we're saying goodnight. So Michelle, you have the last word.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, thank
Second.
you.
Excellent.
Thank you
Second.
so much. We had such great
I
participation.
see a second from
Yeah.
Rebecca, among others, and Ed. And
let's
I
get
presume
everybody
there
out.
is no objection.
And let's get everybody out tomorrow night and to get the public there so the press can pick up. I've alerted the press to come and cover it so they understand how upset we are about it. And then we'll be meeting to strategize the next month with the different groups to make sure we get people out. So everybody, thank you much for your participation. It was much appreciated. Good night, all.
Thank you. Good night.